So funnily, people love really random, like inside, like what they eat for lunch
Yes.
stories. Like I'm telling you, some of our most popular stories that I've written were like what Queen Elizabeth used to eat for lunch that helped her
What
stay
was
young.
it?
Like it was like Dover sole.
Like every day?
Which, like not every day, but she ate it a lot. One of the royal chefs had talked about, her simple lunches and that she used to eat, fish a lot and Dover sole, stuff like that. And people love that stuff. Those kind of little like things that make them normal.
Yep.
Those like normal details.
Hey guys, and welcome to this episode of Things No One Tells You, or TNOTY, as we like to refer to it. This is a very special episode. They're all special. But the reason I say this is special is because it's that certain time of year. It's fall, which I love. I cannot get enough of the pumpkin everything. But this is special because I also cannot get enough of the royal family. This is a true story. I've always been very interested in just following along the storylines. I think it's something that my mom sort of introduced to me when I was little. And I specifically remember when there was the last royal wedding, making Melvin wake up early and just making pancakes and sort of decorating so we could sit there and watch. Not necessarily his cup of tea, no pun intended, but I loved every second of it. So that's why I'm so excited to share this episode with Kristin Contino, who writes about the royals for Marie Claire. And she's amazing. Real quick, I want to start with a little bit of levity. If you follow me socially, then you know that I like to do a joke of the day. So I brought one. What is the royal pup's favorite treat? Crownies. Oh, it's good. Admit it. But anyway, Kristin Contino, so she writes for Marie Claire magazine and everything that goes along with it. I expected in this conversation to hear behind the scenes royal stories, everything about the fashion, the protocol, which I find fascinating, the flashy moments. And she definitely delivers on that, but also what she lingers a bit on how much of her work feels eminently, I would say, relevant, which I find really interesting, especially as a sports journalist, finding out the ins and outs of someone's job that is basically covering the team that is the Royals, right? Prince William, as many of you may have seen, recently spoke about the years since Princess Kate's diagnosis as brutal. He also labeled them without relief. And as a reminder that even, their headlines have real cost. And in that emotional space, Orla, their usually invisible dog, has become meaningful, making small appearances in videos and also portraits as a quiet connection, a sort of nod to everyday life, which I think is also very interesting. So in my talk with Kristin, senior royal and celebrity editor for Marie Claire, we explore how to find space to see the royal families as human, not just symbols, and also how covering royalty really forces you to reckon with admiration, with distance, and with care. I hope you enjoy it. Kristin Contino, I am so excited to welcome you. And I am one of those people who loves to pay attention to the storylines that come out. I actually forced my husband to have brunch and make pancakes during the royal wedding. So I think this is amazing. But so Kristin, I've just explained, what it is that you do working for Marie Claire, the senior editor to royals and celebrity. But I'm so intrigued to hear what your take is like, because I'm guessing that maybe our careers are similar in terms of covering sports and covering the Royals, but maybe I'm totally wrong. What do you think?
No, I think it's very similar. I mean, it's just different topics, but
So, first of all, out of the gate, I mean, what would you say is something no one tells you about covering the royal family as a journalist?
I think what I've found personally interesting, and this probably isn't, true for everyone in the industry, but I grew up, my mom loving Princess Diana and all that in the 80s and 90s. And so that was, something always kind of in the background of my life. And, starting out as a royal fan and then kind of progressing that into your career, it's it's kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie. Like when you take, and this might be true for you too in terms of sports, like being a fan, and then when that's your job, it changes that a little bit. So I think that I guess for me is something that people don't tell you about it. Like you'll look at things differently, and maybe something that was more of like a, an interest or a hobby is now it's not the same. And that's not really in a negative sense per se. It's just different. Um, like I was with my friends in June. We went over to London and we were, at Royal Ascot and a few events,
Oh yeah,
and
the horse racing.
yeah, which was so exciting. Yeah, we definitely have to talk about that. But they were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm shaking," when the Royals went by, and I was just like,
Really?
yeah, like it's exciting, to see. It's nice to see them and ever, but it's different when it's your job. You just look as them as people. You know what I mean? Just like regular people.
Well, so I really value when I look back at how I started. My first job in sports was I actually had been news first, and then I had an opportunity to go and work at a TV station in Miami.
Hmm.
And my job description then became that I was entering the sports department there, but my main job and focus was to report and host for a show called Fins TV that was all about the Miami Dolphins. And really, it was focused on off the field. So what
Okay.
I loved so much about that experience is it was like this master class in observing and watching and learning to understand how a football team was run. So it was much
Hmm.
more than just, you're talking to the players about stuff that they're not necessarily talking about or focusing about on the field, but it really helped me understand all the inner workings of an NFL team. So Kristin, what is it like? Like as it was relative to me learning the inner workings of the
Hmm.
team, and sure there's a, PR director, PR people that you have to ask about, but what is it like the infrastructure of the royal family as it pertains to what you have to deal with as a journalist? Like, how do you do your job?
Yeah. So I think it's super interesting how, especially like the different royals, and I don't just cover the British royals, I cover, Monaco and Denmark. And, I just finished writing an article about one of the princesses in Denmark. So everybody has their own, teams, and how they distribute information is different. And sometimes you're more, with the British royal family, they're very good about sending out press releases, ahead of time, like Princess Kate has an embargoed, event in 2 days or whatever. So, you'll know about it in advance, and, it'll seem like, oh, she made a surprise visit, but everybody, is briefed about it ahead of time.
So when it says an embargoed thing, that means that you guys know about it. You can't talk
Mhm.
about it until they say when you
Yes.
can talk about it. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. Which is great that they let, the journalists know, because then you can prepare in advance and know, okay, like this is happening that day, or, write a story in advance if you can. Which is really helpful. But, not that doesn't always happen. Sometimes there are true surprise appearances, and, you're in the middle of driving your kid to practice or something. You're like, oh, shit.
Has that
But
happened to you? Can you share one
it
that
has,
recently?
yes. It's happened before. I would say it most often would happen with the Sussexes, just because a lot of times their things aren't always, announced in advance. But yeah, I've definitely been either in the car or out, or, it's the end of the day, and I'm like, oh, geez. Like something has happened, or, I was on a cruise ship when Kate's cancer diagnosis was announced. I was with my family, literally starting a cruise, and I got an email I was just kind of scrolling my emails, waiting for a show to start or whatever we were doing. And I was like, oh my God. So luckily at that time, I was working at Page Six at the time. I was covering royal fashion. So I wasn't covering the news side. It's definitely, and I would say more so for people in the UK. I mean, if you're in the UK and covering the royal family, like everything, you're doing is revolving around what they're doing and what happens. And, it's much more difficult than here, I would say.
So I remember, like there have been times, say I want to do a story on an NFL player or whatever sport, fill in the blank, and you're going, if it's not directly to that person, which it sounds like maybe it wouldn't be so much directly Princess Kate, or am I wrong? Like, would you have a one-on-one relationship where you could say, hey, I would love to do this. Let me talk to your team.
No.
No.
Yeah, their team is controlling everything. Yeah.
And do you have opportunities where you get to talk to them?
Yeah, I mean, I've last year, spoken like one on one with Harry. I interviewed Meghan last fall
Yes.
also. So yeah, and I've met William before. Yeah, it's nice when you can have those kind of one on one conversations, versus just like at an event or, you're in a group of people just kind of watching what they're doing. And it's a much more human connection. And I think like when I
Yes.
was saying, what people don't tell you or whatever, when you know people more, I'm not saying that you know them per se, but when you are having conversations with them and talking to them, it's hard to kind of view them as like, oh my God, it's the king or whatever. It's just they're a
Exactly.
normal person. Maybe not quite normal, but
Right. And you're getting to know who they are at the core, what the things are that are
hmm
relatable in your own life, et cetera. So if you have a story idea to write something, can you bring it to their press team? Is that how that works?
yeah, yeah, for sure. So if I had, an idea for an exclusive or an interview or something like that specifically, I would, approach the press team. And, it's nice to have those relationships with people and be collaborative. And then, it'll go the other way as well. Like, oh, we have this coming up, I would love for you guys to cover it. Just, what happened when I interviewed Megan last year. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to have those relationships.
So tell me about that when you interviewed Megan. What was that experience like?
It was great. I went to Venice to interview her, and she was with an organization that Archwell, their foundation, works
Yes.
with called the Welcome Project. And there's some women from Afghanistan who have resettled in the U.S. and they get together. They're all in that general, area in Southern California, and they get together and cook together and have meals and share stories, and it's kind of like building connection. So there was a group of the women there, and we had an outdoor dinner, and just kind of it was a holiday based. It was right before Thanksgiving, so it was nice to just like sit around the table and hear their stories. And Megan had met most of them before, so they all knew her and were comfortable with her. And then got to speak with her afterward and just hear more about the work she does with them. And she's just so invested in hearing about their stories, and the women just loved her so much. And it was just really sweet to see. There was one she was younger, in her early 20s, I think, maybe, and she had not met her before and was very overwhelmed. And it was really cute because she's like, "You're so
Oh.
pretty," and hugged her and took a picture. It was really sweet.
What is your take? I've watched a few episodes of her show on Netflix. I love it. I love the feel of
Yeah.
it, and I just was curious what you think, but also maybe what you sense is a perception from the other side. From
Mhm.
the royal family.
Yeah, I loved the show too. I thought it was really like visually beautiful and
Mhm.
just like feel good. There's so many negative things. Like some of my friends are obsessed with watching murder shows. I'm just not. I can't do it. And I just want to watch something pleasant. Um, so I don't know. I loved it, but yeah, I mean, there's always that side of people who are just going to be negative about anything she does. So it's interesting in this kind of royal community, and especially on social media, people are very active in the royal fandom on social media. So I see both sides of everything kind of all the time, um, which is tough because I have friends, who I've had relationships with for years who are either bloggers or, whatever, Instagrammers. And I don't always agree with, things that they say on either side, but it's very, it's very, team. It's still very Team Kate, Team Megan, which I don't get. Um, so yeah, it's hard reading things like that, like I had said, when you have met a person and think that they're very genuine and kind and all the things, and, reading things about them. And, the same goes the other way. So,
So what is your take on that relationship
with the royal family,
with Kate and Meghan?
it's hard to say because, you know, everyone has their stories and opinions,
Yeah.
and but one person says one thing and the other says the complete opposite.
Mhm.
Um,
You're dialed in with both of their teams, right? So, and I would imagine maybe some people aren't. If you're a journalist, maybe you are, but yeah. So I just thought I think your perspective is really interesting.
yeah, it's hard because, as a journalist, you want to be fair and balanced. And I think what I find personally difficult is, if you're writing a story about Meghan or Harry and it's positive, then you'll see people. I mean, literally this week, I saw someone writing something like that who very much doesn't like them, saying, "Oh, someone so and so must be a mouthpiece for the Sussexes," and it's like, or you must be on their payroll. And it's like, no, just
Yeah.
writing an article about something positive that happened. Um, so that can be difficult because either way, people say, "Oh, you wrote this beautiful article about Kate, and what about them?" And it's not. It doesn't have to be an either or.
Right. Right. It could, I know I get that because I think sometimes it's like if you are if you have access and if you get a story that you're like, oh, that is happening. That is a cool thing.
Mhm.
Um, right. It's like perception can be such a driving force. And I think about that a lot actually, in journalism. It's like, because also the other thing I was curious about is how social media and everything has changed your job. And I guess I would love to know like what really, we know that there's such a rabid fan base, but what is it that people you find really want to know most as it pertains to the royal family? And how much has any of this for you changed because
Mhm.
of social media?
So funnily, people love really random, like inside, like what they eat for lunch
Yes.
stories. Like I'm telling you, some of our most popular stories that I've written were like what Queen Elizabeth used to eat for lunch that helped her
What
stay
was
young.
it?
Like it was like Dover sole,
Like every day?
which like not every day, but she ate it a lot. And yeah, it was one of the royal chefs had talked about, her simple lunches and that she used to eat, fish a lot and Dover sole and stuff like that. And people love that stuff, like just, stuff about what they eat or, things about their houses or, those kind of little like things that make them normal.
Yep.
Those like normal details, which funnily, even not like, stories about them wearing a tiara or something like that's always going to be interesting, but it's, I would say more so, the random details.
It's like the 25 things no one knows about you, in the
Yeah.
back of their
Hmm.
mind. Um, okay. So from your perspective, what do you think is the most interesting outfit that Princess Kate has ever worn? Do you have one? Do you have a favorite?
I do actually. It's
I
funny you
love
asked
that
that.
you do.
So I actually just wrote an article that I was planning for later this month. But
Okay.
so
Tell,
remember
please.
when she went to the James Bond premiere and she wore that gold gown and sequins? It was the
Yes. Yes.
gown. That is my favorite outfit that she's ever worn. It was just so unexpected. She doesn't usually go that, over the top glam. And I just thought that was amazing. Like the sequin cape, it was great. I actually have, you probably can't see it on my wall, like under the 10, there's a little illustration of her wearing that.
Oh, I love it.
My friend gave me that as a gift.
I love that. And that brings me back to like your fandom. Tell me how your interest in the royal family, how it started and when it
Mhm.
started for you.
So, my mom, Princess Diana, all that stuff. I always loved Princess Diana. And so when I was little, that was my thing. But I wouldn't say I was really personally invested in royals as more of a fan. I mean, I even studied abroad in London in college, but at the time I was like, oh, cool. Like, I mean, Princess Diana had already died. Like, there was not a lot going on at that point because William and Kate weren't married yet. So I don't think like when I was there, I really cared that much about the royals. Like my friends and I were supposed to go to Buckingham Palace on a tour and we skipped it and went to the pub. So that tells you like my level of interest at the time.
Okay, yeah.
And it was more like when William and Kate were dating and when they got engaged is when I first became really more invested because I was personally very interested in her fashion. Um,
Okay.
and so I went to London a few weeks before her wedding. So it was timed with a work trip for my husband and missed the royal wedding. And I was devastated. And I was like, if Harry, when Harry gets married, can we go to the wedding? And he was like, yeah, sure. And at the time, he was like, you know, not anywhere close to getting married because this was
Yeah.
2011. And he was like, well, I never thought that. that would happen, like when it came. And I said, well, we're going. So
And
that
you're
was
in
funny.
Philly, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So that meant that you were getting on a plane and you were going.
Yeah. So we went with my son, who was like 4 at the time. They didn't go to the wedding. They went to Legoland Windsor, but I went with one of my good friends who lives in the UK. And yeah, it's funny. But yeah, I was always just, kind of interested in William and Kate. And, I obviously the Queen was someone who I always looked up to. But I wouldn't say that my royal fandom really began until like 2010. And I started blogging because I was so interested in royal fashion, and that led to me writing for a royal news site called Royal Central. And then from there, that's when I got my job at Page Six. And I was always freelance writing and editing kind of
Okay.
in the background. My original background is in PR, so I did that
Which
jump
is
from
probably
PR to
helpful.
journalism. It definitely is helpful, and it's on a day to day when you see, and I know, you would have the same experience when you have PR people contacting you and like, where they're coming from and what that entails. I think it's very helpful in my job, and I try to be, when I can, respond. It's not always possible to respond to people, but I know what it feels like to be on that end and sending pitches and just getting ignored. Um, so I think it's definitely good to have that background, and like that background in pitching and being able to craft stories is really
Yes.
helpful.
That's also really interesting because I find that most times you have it go the other way, whereas
Yeah.
a journalist will end up going into PR, right?
Hmm.
So you're right. I think that's a really valuable thing. And you're right. It's like it's just people wanting to be seen. You don't want to be, like
Yeah.
you said, ignored. What was it about the royal fashion that really like lit you up?
So Kate in particular, her 2010s, era of fashion, that's probably one of my favorite fashion times for her. But I think her and Pippa, because, Pippa at the time was
Yes.
photographed like every day walking through London, and I loved her fashion too. I
And
wish
by
she would
the
be
way,
out more.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I just saw something about her hair chopped.
Hmm.
I was like, where has she been? I
Yeah.
totally forgot about this and I love her. I
Mhm.
agree with you. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, she just was at what was it? It was a race, and I
Yes,
same thing. I was like, where has she been? Because it was really the first time she's been spotted in public all year, really,
with her
at a
husband.
public event. Yeah.
And then I was sort
Um,
of like, well, wait a minute, all this stuff is happening. Right. Yes.
yeah, I don't know why she doesn't go to more things, but yeah, I was very invested in Pippa at the time too. So I just loved how they dressed, and it was more, it was relatable to someone who was, in their late 20s, early 30s,
Mhm.
buying from Zara, or, I remember the first dress that I want to say it was like 2011 or 12, I guess. Kate wore this Zara dress, and it was a black and white kind of brocade dress with a bubble skirt. And that was the first thing I ever bought that she had worn. And you just
Oh,
feel like so special when you
yeah.
can track that down and you're like, I'm wearing the same thing as them. And so I liked that she had that accessibility where, you could go out and buy the same thing and not spend thousands of dollars. And I started blogging and sharing kind of more affordable copies for things that were expensive that she wore. And that was really fun. That was, a fun period to be able to do that.
That's really cool. How much do you think that their lives are just like us? Are they or no? And I'm talking now about the royals,
Yeah.
focusing on Kate and
I
William.
think probably more than some people might think. Just, like George and Charlotte and Louis are going to school, like, any other kids running, playing sports, like Kate and William will go to their, sports matches, soccer, or, whatever they're doing, just like normal parents. And I know just like some friends in the UK who know people who are in similar circles say that, they're very involved with, that kind of thing. Like they're just at the soccer match like everybody else. So I think that's nice that they do have that kind of, more normal background to grow up in, which, I don't think William and Harry had quite as much. They
Yeah.
had more than previous generations. They definitely did, but I think George and Charlotte and Louis take it to, another level of having more privacy. And they definitely, are keeping them out of the public eye while still kind of, bringing them to things and showing pictures when they can. So I think it is it's a nice balance. I think as they get older, they'll probably have to bring them to more things and kind of like have the public know them better with George, at least, since he's going to
Mhm.
be the king. Um, so it'll be interesting when they start to do that.
It's I think for like anyone that's listening or watching that is really interested in something, it like you are a perfect example of like how you can be invested and be a reporter basically
Mm-hmm.
on something that you really love, right? So is it what would you say is something that has surprised you that you learned after the fact, after you've gotten the job that you have?
Hmm. I don't know if anything has surprised me per se. Maybe more of like the difference in like writing. So when I was at Page Six, I only covered fashion. I worked for Page Six Style, and so I would do celebrities as a whole. A lot of housewives and stuff like that, and Kim Kardashian and everybody, and also royals. And so it would be fewer and far, between when I would cover royals because they're not always out and about. There's not always something to write about. Whereas in my role now, I'm covering royal news and fashion.
Yeah.
So I'm covering everything, and when there's a slower time, like we were talking earlier, off camera about how August is a slower time of year, they're doing
Everyone
less
gets away.
paranormal, everybody's away, there's not a lot to cover. So, in terms of that, I guess it's surprising when you realize, oh, like you have to think of things to come up with and write about during a time when, there's really nothing going on in, kind of royal circles that call it silly season, because that's when the media starts making up shit.
Like
Or
what?
not, just like coming up with things to come up with or stir the pot because there's nothing going on. So yeah, this will actually be my first summer in silly season, so to speak. So should be interesting, but I think it's good to kind of flex your journalistic skills in that sense,
Yeah.
because you have to think of like, okay, well, what stories can I come up with during a time when nothing is going on?
How do
Whereas like
you do that?
I would say like interviews are really important. So there's a few royal books coming out right now. So I just was doing an interview yesterday with someone. I have a former butler. A lot of the former palace staff will go on these kind of like PR retainers where they'll work with, an agency, and they send out quotes and things like that from them. Um, so those are always like great sources. Like Princess Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, does a lot of that
Yes.
stuff. And interviewing them or kind of coming up with topical seasonal things like what did the queen like to do when she was at Balmoral, or like what are your personal stories about summertime with Diana and that sort of thing. um, so I try to do a lot of that. Also, with royal books coming out, there's always an opportunity for new stories, because I think, in addition to the normal tidbit, what they eat for lunch things, people are really interested in nostalgia or kind of like new old stories,
Mhm.
especially about Diana in particular. So, like anything that comes out, about this person said she did this in the 80s, or, people are always interested in that. And it's surprising how many new stories you can come up with, just people doing interviews or on social media or whatever, or sharing, her hairdresser sharing a tidbit about some interaction they had, or, those types of things. I think that's always nice to get the perspective of people who worked with someone or, actually knew them, like a more human level of, what they were like. So I think those are always good to, fill those times when there's not a lot going on.
What is the royal family's perspective on people that you said that go on retainer after they leave the service of what they're doing, like the butler, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about some of there's a few, butlers or gardeners or cooks or whatever, and I don't
Right.
really know what their opinions are of them specifically. I know, with Paul Burrell, there was, I don't know if you know a lot about him, but he was like, he was involved after Diana's death. There was a lot of like bad blood between him and William and Harry. And I know like he's not viewed favorably in that
Mhm.
sense by them, or at least, wasn't for a long time. I can't imagine that's changed. Um, but I don't know about other ones. It's interesting though, because the Queen, when she was, a child, she had a nanny, and it was her nanny and Princess Margaret's, and she went on and wrote a book, and the Queen Mother had approved her, I guess, to write these stories for a
The nanny.
magazine, and she ended up getting banished, like by the royal family, and she was, very beloved, like part of the family, and she wrote this book, and it's very, very sweet. It's like the sweetest, like just nicest book, and I don't know why the Queen Mother, yeah, just totally cut her off, and no one spoke to her anymore. So it's interesting now to see, like, Queen Elizabeth's dresser, Angela Kelly, wrote this whole book about, dressing the Queen, and that was approved by her and endorsed. And then, years before, it was, this woman wrote a book, it was totally cut off. So I guess times have changed in that sense.
Right. Or I guess it depends, right? Like what is
Hmm.
content, but it is fascinating. If you could choose a theme, a story that you would love to write, do you have something out there that you would love to be able to get the access to talk about or explore?
So Duchess Sophie is probably one of my favorite royals, if not the favorite. And I think she is just so interesting in the work. She does a lot of work with sexual violence against women.
Hmm.
And I would love to speak to her about that, because I think it's such an important topic. And in the royal world, there's a lot of like soft causes, and so to go for something like that is not really the norm. And Queen Camilla is the same. She does a lot of domestic violence work, and I think the two of them, it's just fascinating, like what they do in terms of that. But also, Sophie has like traveled to Ukraine and to places that most real women like wouldn't necessarily go. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would love to talk to her about that. That would probably be my number one.
What is something that you think that people should know, that you've, observed or witnessed about the royal family?
I think kind of going back to what I just said is the amount of work that they do for,
Mhm.
these charities and causes around the world, and not just in Britain, but, around the world. I think maybe a lot of people think like, oh, they're just parading around in fancy dresses, and, you know, taxpayers paying for them, but they do so much, in terms of these organizations. And, like Prince William has his Earthshot Prize working with climate change and environmental things and all these things. Like King Charles, I mean, in the 70s, he was talking about environmentalism when nobody was talking about that. And it was
Yeah.
very considered like weird, hippie thing to do. And now, I mean, everybody is into sustainability, but he was kind of banging that drum like, 40 years ago. Um, so I think that, the work they do is really important, and they kind of lead by example. So I think that sometimes, I mean, Americans definitely probably don't know as much about that kind of stuff, because I think Americans are more interested in the drama aspects of stories and the clothes, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. The hats, the clothes. I also think something that I'm curious about is how much, I don't want to use the word freedom, but how much like ownership can they put on themselves? Like, or is it really heavy handed? Have times changed, or is it like you are expected to do this? You know what I'm saying?
like in terms of like champion like a cause.
Well, no, I mean, could be a cause, but I just mean like the day to day. Like, what are they expected to do day to day?
Mm,
How they have to carry themselves. If Princess Kate wants to go out and get a hot dog somewhere, can she just do that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm
yeah.
a horrible example, but I I would love to. I loved what she just did recently, where she came out and she was talking about visiting the hospital,
Hmm.
where she was speaking about how people don't share how difficult it is after you get cancer treatment. And I just found that so eye opening because to me, that sounded really authentic. Like, wow, she's admitting this thing that
Yeah.
has the potential to be hugely relatable. And especially here in the US, just so, I think such a thing that people can say, oh my gosh, yes. And so, I mean, I'll be honest, I got the kindest rejection letter I've ever had in my life from her press team because I was like, please, I want to talk to her about this. I had no thought, but I was like, you've got to try for it because I just thought her power to reach people and the fact that she's opening up about that seemed really personal to me.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, maybe it's not. But I thought, so I guess my point is how much of that, it seems to me like this is going to sound horrible, but she plays the game very well. And I think she is someone that I would just love to be friends with. And that she seems so put together, so confident, and like she knows how to handle her stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, she
You might not
does.
like
Like
it.
I think it's she does a balance of, telling you something but not telling like too much. Um like, we were saying with her talking about what it was like having cancer, like at no point in that did she say, I really. It was like when you have, um
That's
so it's
fascinating.
yeah, so it's personal, but at the same time, it's like she could, you could relate that to anyone, which is interesting because, she's talking about an experience she had. So people, I think, automatically were like, oh, she was saying it was hard for her, which she was, but also
Yeah,
she didn't say I or me.
that's very interesting because I squarely took it like she's saying hers to the point that I was like, oh my goodness, like this must have been
Hmm.
more intense than maybe other people, people really realized.
Yeah.
So that
And
is,
I'm sure she was, saying
yeah,
it about herself, but I've, something, and I guess I pay more attention to it. But when I was reading that, I was like, oh, she didn't say I. So people automatically, take that as her saying, X was very hard. And she has said, things about herself personally before. But I think that, when she is sharing stuff, like she's definitely careful of, what she is sharing and trying to keep as much personal as she can because it's such a private battle and a private experience that I think, she wants
yeah.
to keep some of that, to herself.
Well, I think it's really awesome what you do. And I can't
Hmm.
wait to read more of your things because I just think it's fun. It's something that everyone wants to read, but the expertise it takes behind it to navigate is it's really like the truest form of journalism, and it's pretty awesome, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, is there something that you can share that you have coming up that you're writing about that people, that you can tease for us that people can look for besides the
Ooh.
outfit that you shared?
Yeah. Yeah. Princess Kate's 10 best evening gowns
Yeah.
coming up. Um, so yeah, since it is kind of a slower time, there's not any big, Wimbledon was just
Yeah.
there. And, I just did a story about Royal Ascot that was really fun to work on. So I don't have any big things like that coming up yet. But yeah, there's always something, which I think is, one of the best parts of the job is that there's always something, something to write about, even when there's not something going on, there's something going on. And I think it's interesting in a, industry that's so focused on, what these specific people are doing that you can still be busy all the time when they're doing nothing.
And do you have to come to the table with your things, or will you have an editor or someone who's like, hey, I want this XYZ? Like, do you have to just constantly be sort of coming up with suggestions?
Yeah, I do my own ideas every day. So that's nice. Because it's not always that way in journalism. But yeah, I come up with my own pitches every day, which is great. And, being able to have that control over what you're writing, I think is really important. And my team at Marie Claire is amazing. Everyone is so, friendly and supportive. And, again, you don't always see that in the journalism world. So it's a really, nice environment.
Besides writing for Marie Claire, you've also written books, novels. Okay, can you share what you've written about?
Sure. So actually, one of my books is a royal theme. book, and it's about a woman who was obsessed with Princess Diana and kind of lived in London in the 80s when they got married, and Diana and Charles, and then became a compulsive hoarder of royal family memorabilia.
Yeah.
Not based on my own experience.
No.
Um, and then she goes on a hoarding reality show with her daughter, who is a morning host in New York. So that was a lot of fun to write. And I think, the research part, like there's a scene where they go, her and the boyfriend, later husband, go to Diana and Charles's wedding and camp out. And it's really fun to kind of write that from the experience of someone who has, been to a royal wedding, but, in this era, not that era, and researching that. Yeah, that was fun. And I have another novel called The Legacy of Us that came out in
Awesome.
2015. And that's more of a multi-generational story with, different women in a family and how they inherit a cameo necklace, like each of them through the years. And yeah, that was my first novel.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, Prince William actually has a copy of A House Full of Windsor. When I was at the coronation, they did an event, William and Kate, at a pub in London, and my friends and I had literally just got off the plane and went to go, hang out there. And so we met William, and Kate was kind of on the other side of the crowd, and I was going to give her the book. So I said to him, like, "Oh, can you give this to Kate?" And we had a really nice conversation. Actually, the pub, this is really crazy, but the pub that they went to, that we were standing outside of, actually was in my book. They
Oh,
went
wow.
there in a scene in the book. So it was a really weird coincidence. So that was, yeah, surreal that happened. But yeah, he was great about it. And yeah, it was just funny because I was like, they went to this pub.
Did you get any feedback from him?
I didn't. I should have asked later. I never did. If Kate
You
actually
still can. You still
got
can.
it, I still can. Feel like, remember 3 years ago?
That's awesome. Kristin, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we
Hmm.
end?
You have to come to Royal Ascot. That was one thing I had to share
Tell me
because
what Royal
you
Ascot
love it.
is like. 'Cause, yeah, I've heard great things. I know that you like to horseback ride. That's something that you
Hmm.
picked up later too. I would love to hear. How's that going for you?
Good. Actually, I'm going later tonight, even though it's 95 degrees here. It's horrible. Um, yeah, I actually was inspired by the Queen to start riding, just because I thought, okay, if she's 96 and she's still riding, I surely can do this as an adult.
Yeah.
And I mean, only as a kid had been on, pony rides or on vacation on a little, trek, nothing crazy. So I was straight up beginner. And so I've been doing it since, yeah, she died in 2022. So coming up on 3 years.
Wow. So you
Yeah,
have not done it at all.
no,
Were you
no,
nervous?
at all. Not really, which I probably should have been. But, yeah, I jump and everything. So it's a great stress reliever, and I love animals. So I think,
Mhm.
just being around animals, and, like Queen Camilla does work with horses too, and Princess Anne in terms of like, emotional support animals, therapy.
Yeah.
And I think I totally believe that because I think horses are so, like, they know what you're thinking. Um, so yeah, I love it, but Royal Ascot is really fun just in the sense that it's nothing like in the US where you could go to the Kentucky Derby, which I haven't been yet, but people are wearing hats and whatever, but this is like, my horse trainer was like, this is like stepping into a PBS,
Oh,
masterpiece
really?
theater because people have the top hats on and the full
Oh,
tails and
wow.
suits. Even though it was so hot the one day we were there, it was so hot, and you're not allowed to take your coat off or your hat or anything unless, yeah, they have to tell you if you're allowed because it's a certain temperature, and they hadn't. And the guys I was with were dying 'cause it was so hot. It felt
Oh my
terrible.
gosh. Why is that
Yeah,
the case that you can't take your hat off?
you're just tradition. But yeah, they were sweating to death.
Oh my God.
But it's so fun, just to see even the fashion. Anybody who's interested in fashion, like when you go to a race, there's always
Yeah.
the most interesting outfits and hats and everything. And yeah, it's a really great day out. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Is there something that's really big in fashion over in London and just in general that you've seen? Any trends that are interesting?
So polka dots, specifically white dresses with black polka dots. If I had like
Wow.
$1 for every time I saw someone wearing one at Royal Ascot,
Really?
I could have bought a bottle of champagne. Like it was crazy. Though my friend got dragged into a news segment on ITV Racing because they were like, "We're doing a story about people wearing polka dots."
Specifically white background with black.
Yeah, it was like all these women wearing, different versions of, polka dot dresses. It was really fun. There's so many people, with polka dots and kind of like 80s influence
Mhm.
outfits too, which is fun because I love an 80s influence. So yeah, there's a lot of that, and the butter yellow, which I feel like
Yes.
should be over by now, but it's not.
Easy. That was my bridesmaid's dress color. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, after a while, it's kind of like, okay, all right, got to move on.
enough. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we should all go out and buy polka dots for now.
yes.
Kristin, thank you so much. So again, people can read about fashion and the royals and celebrity and Marie Claire. That's where you do your stuff, do your writing. Anywhere where else that people can follow you? Where should people go?
I'm on Instagram at Royally Kristin C. It's Kristin with an I.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been so
Thank
entertaining.
you.
Maybe we can team up and do Royal Ascot sometime together.
Yes.
Amazing. I appreciate Kristin's time. And I also appreciate learning about how her job works and that sometimes, it's similar to journalists in other fields where you're just getting a call in the middle of the evening or whenever it is with news that breaks. And also it made me think about how much pressure also that must be in a way to just keep the relationships up, as she talked about having an exclusive and taking that to the press team. It sounds like a really fun job, but also one that comes with a lot of high demand and big pressure. So anyway, I am so appreciative of Kristin taking the time to join me. I also love hearing all the recent stories and love that we're seeing more from them in the news, especially with Prince William out there deciding to share what he experienced and what his family is going through with Princess Kate. So Kristin Contino, you can read her work in Marie Claire. We know that there will be a lot more coming up. And as always, thank you for listening to this episode of TNOTY. If there's something that you would love to hear us talk about, we want to hear from you. And also, if you could leave a review, follow us, subscribe. We'll see you next time on Things No One Tells You. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you back here next week. Please don't forget, follow and subscribe to Things No One Tells You. And of course, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to leave a 5-star review because that's really what helps people get more listeners. We would love to grow this community. We are so grateful that you're a part of it. See you next time.